people who can't or won't control their population growth. So when you see Ehrlich, Hansen, Lovelock in today's article, if we could go back to that graphic about how we must build an entirely new kind of global society, they are talking about building up such a world mechanism that you could save the environment by controlling population and especially by controlling food. After all, that's what MIT and the Club of Rome say is going to be the downfall of humanity, is when the food resources run out, when the energy runs out, and on, that will trigger a decline in the population. The problem is it's all manufactured by these elitists, and they've been developing this agenda for at least half a century, really more than a century, and it's just sickening. And it's all in the news this year, in the past few days, in the past few weeks, trying to sell you on it. And I say don't buy it. And finally, tonight in the news segment, we're about to interview John Corbett, who exposed over a month ago the failure of the body scanners. He demonstrated how you could sneak objects through undetected. That has only been more confirmed as he's now talked with a witness, an employee, a whistleblower from the TSA, who he calls Jennifer here. We won't use her real name. He has it. We don't. In the article by Paul Joseph Watson, TSA whistleblower, body scanners routinely fail. And it's her discussing how routinely, when they test machines in real-life cases, people are able to get through with undetected objects, some of them metallic, some of them objects similar to or likened unto a wallet. You can see that all on his video. We'll show you just a clip of it here where when she complained to TSA, they began to procedure against her and tried to run her out of the job, even though she demonstrated that there's insufficient training, especially for the body scanner uses.
You wrote to Congress about the problems that you saw in the TSA.
I did.
What happened?
I sent my letter on January 1st, and I came back from sick leave about a week later, and I was immediately removed from screening duties.
Okay, so you sent a letter to a congressman or to several, saying, hey, there's a problem with the TSA, and the TSA's response was retaliatory, would you say?
Yes.
Was that the end of your screening duties? Have you been back to screening since?
No.
This is why the TSA sucks, because good employees who point out when the public is being put at risk aren't listened to, they aren't promoted, they're fired. The TSA spouts off on their blog about the professionalism of their employees, just as when they're caught on video molesting children at airports, they defend their employees' fondlings as by the book. That book being the Screening Checkpoint Standard Operating Procedures, or SOP. The SOP is the TSA's secret guide as to how TSA employees are supposed to do screenings at airports. The only problem is TSA employees never actually read that book.
Supposedly there is a standard operating procedures manual on every checkpoint. I've never seen it.
So you wouldn't know where to go to
No.
find this book?
No. I know, you can't make this stuff up.
And so with more on the TSA body scanner issue, we turn now to John Corbett, who has done a lot of investigating on this and has the brand new interview you just saw clips from. Thanks for joining us, John.
Thanks for having me.
So briefly recap your own experience with testing out and investigating the body scanners, and then let's get into what this new interview shows.
Sure. Last month I tested the body scanners by essentially taking objects through the scanners in a position on my body in which the scanners wouldn't be able to see them. And it actually works out to simply being right on your side, either left or right side. As long as it's on the extreme side and it's metal, it's not going to be visible. So I tested it with both kinds of body scanners the TSA is using now, both the millimeter wave and the X-rays, and was allowed to proceed both times with these undetected objects.
It's just totally insane, but they make everyone go through them, even though they're known to be ineffective. But now, of course, as we just saw the clips, you've confirmed this with a TSA employee. Let's get into that story.
Correct. So since I posted that video, and even before then, actually, since my lawsuit got filed a year and a half ago, I've had TSA screeners occasionally contact me, telling me stories from things such as screeners rip up comment cards when people leave angry notes, to stories of theft, to the body scanners and the pat downs, and I was lucky enough to have one of them willing to go on camera with me for an interview regarding the efficacy of the scanners.
And she, of course, admitted that they really kind of ignore known problems. They don't have adequate staff. And then you told me behind the scenes they like to avoid body scanner duty because they know it's ineffective, they know it's dangerous, and they know the public doesn't like it.
Correct. They told me they even go so far as to fail training exams that the TSA gives them in order to avoid being able to be put in those lines, even though the TSA seems to put people in the lines that aren't certified anyway.
That's just absolutely bizarre. And specifically, she said they've done tests, you know, where it's a TSA-controlled test, and they'll bring in guns, knives, powder meant to resemble explosives, and all that is routinely missed, although it's probably also sometimes found. But the key word is sometimes.
Correct. And you can imagine being a TSA screener brought in for a training on this device and, you know, taking a bag of explosive on your one side and a gun on the other side, walking through this machine, and the machine says, "Okay, clear." You know, I just can't fathom what the reaction in the room must have been when these you know, multi-$100,000 devices fail to detect something that a cheap metal detector would have.
But of course, the metal detectors have also failed to find these kinds of things. You've had the air marshals and other groups testing out those devices. None of it could be 100% effective. I mean, they just can't keep us safe, anything they do about it. So we may as well retain our freedoms since they're more valuable anyway.
Correct. You know, nothing's 100% effective, but it's pretty difficult to sneak metal threat items through a metal detector. That takes some special skill. To beat these nude body scanners takes almost nothing. You know, the size of your body is just one place that they won't be detected. And according to this TSA screener, sometimes things aren't detected no matter where you put them. So it's a big problem. You know, the TSA has come at us with these machines saying that these invasions on our privacy are necessary because these machines will keep us safe. You know, I don't agree that trashing our Constitution is ever necessary. But even if you're on the other side of that argument, the machines just don't keep us any safer.
Now, the other side of the safety issue obviously concerns the radiation with these body scanners. We've discussed briefly, let's get more into it, how the employees themselves are concerned about it. In Boston Logan, they had a reported cancer cluster. A lot of those TSA workers were obviously concerned. The agency didn't want to give them dosimeters, as I understand. So that issue's on the table. Passengers are concerned about radiation. Let's get into this issue.
Correct. You know, as you said, the TSA has refused to provide those dosimeters to the Transportation Security Administration's employees that are standing next to those scanners all day long. You know, I kind of feel bad for them because, you know, as a passenger, I might go through a few times a week if I'm a frequent flyer, but they're getting scanned through the ambient radiation all day long, every day. So that's going to be a serious concern for them. The TSA does not put out specifications as to, you know, exactly how much these scanners are recorded to be put out. They don't regularly calibrate them, and they don't allow independent testing.
Yeah, and now they're saying Congress might make them test the machine someday.
Right, and every time Congress asks them to test it, they test it themselves, and we're left to take the TSA's word for it. There needs to be some serious independent testing of these machines, both for the safety for this radiation and for the efficacy. You know, the TSA has this idea of keeping us safe by keeping things secret, but then it comes out that by doing so, all you need to do is put a metal object on your side in order to beat it. You know, if these machines had been tested by the community, by the security community, that they wouldn't have gone in with this vulnerability.
But you brought up how you feel sorry for the TSA agents. I do too. I mean, they're sitting, in the case of the metal detectors and the luggage scanning machines, about a foot away from a big rapist scan machine that says radiation, danger, and they sit there all day for a whole shift. I mean, of course they're the ones who are going to get hurt. And the government's got the study going back to at least 1998, obviously before 9/11 happened, showing that at least one variation of the scanners would cause statistically about 100 deaths per year. I mean, at what point is this a far greater danger than terrorism itself?
Absolutely, and you know, a lot of things that I interviewed my TSA screener about didn't get put in, and one of them is that the TSA screeners are all afraid to use these machines. They really don't want to be there. They don't like it, and since the machines and the pat downs were implemented in November 2010, the TSA has been held to work for them. So it's something to watch for, and you know, what happens when 10 years later a whole bunch of screeners get cancer? What does the government say? You know, we're sorry. It's no good.
Judging from what I've read from time to time on the TSA blog, I would say it's a lot of obscuring and covering up and even lying at times. But your source, Jennifer, she's been a TSA worker. They've tried to run her out of the agency. You released a short clip. It was, what, 6-7 minutes. You said she talked even longer on camera. Get into her situation. Why are they driving her out, and how? And what else did she tell you?
Sure. She's been driven out of the TSA essentially for writing to Congress about the problems that she found. Everything from being forced to use the scanners without being properly trained and certified for them, being forced to pat down people's head when it's clear that there's nothing there. I've heard travelers report being bald and still having screeners touch their head as part of the pat down process. Management just generally not listening to anything that comes to it. So the TSA, instead of trying to fix these problems, tries to essentially hide the screeners that do it. So she was recommended for termination, and it took her 3 months to go through that process, and today is her last day on the job.
And so what else did she tell you that possibly you're going to release in the future?
Sure. More information about the pat-downs. The TSA has said that these pat-downs aren't invasive, but she's confirmed for me that if done properly, they will actually be touching your genitals. What else? The most important parts I think I got in there, but there's definitely a lot more on the pat-downs and on TSA sentiment that maybe I'll release in the future video.
But that's what's overall amazing to me. We know that a lot of passengers are upset. We know that civil rights critics are very righteously upset because it's a blatant violation of several constitutional amendments and our basic freedoms overall. But it's interesting to note that even the TSA employees are upset about this. And clearly, TSA knows they're under siege. They know they've had to respond to your incident. They've had to respond to incidences about touching children, all kinds of things they have to respond to officially on their blog, even though it's an anonymous person who doesn't use a real name. They shut down the body scanners when there was a planned revolt November of 2010 over the Thanksgiving holiday. They know they're getting a pushback from the public. They're just trying to keep us overall unaware of that. What's your response?
It's an interesting, what do you do when you've invested hundreds of millions of dollars, probably close to $1 billion by now, into these machines, and find out that the public doesn't like them, that they don't work, that they're unsafe? The TSA's approach has been to kind of double down and to buy more of these scanners and to try and force us via propaganda to accept them. I don't understand why they took it any further. These machines were fatally flawed. They knew it before they released them. They thought they could get one over on the public. Obviously, that didn't happen. It's time for the TSA to fold their card and say, we screwed up here.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to hold my breath on that, but please do keep up your efforts, and let's keep putting pressure on them to at least be honest, test the machines, and if they're going to put them in there, they at least need to be tested. I mean, for God's sake. But of course, they really shouldn't be allowed to violate our civil rights either. We should be able to travel in a normal fashion, but we'll see what happens. Yeah. John Corbett, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, and we'll be back after this break with Rob Dew, who will have Mike Adams in studio to discuss the latest on the unfortunate incident where the chicken farmer has lost his life thanks to government pressure. We'll be back. Thanks for watching the INFOWARS Nightly News, and consider subscribing to support us at PrisonPlanet.tv.
Well, I think terrorism is being practiced on the residents of the city of Oakland because many of the retired teachers, retired military people have informed me